Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help. And King of Floors, your vinyl, laminate, and engineered flooring superstore.
It is Wednesday, and all of our guests today, including Iain MacIntyre from Sportsnet, sponsored by the O's marketing team at Royal LePage. They will find your next home in Nanaimo, Nanoose Bay, Parksville, and Qualicum Beach. Find out more at wearerealestate.com as we bring in our friend from Sportsnet.ca, Iain MacIntyre, on a day we find out Kole Lind is a member of the Seattle Kraken. How are you, Iain?
I'm well. Wouldn't it be great if we could all just be personally sponsored in our lives? Like you just walk around, you've got a logo on your shoulder because somebody's given you $1,000 a month just to wear it.
Yes.
Hey, that'd be pretty good. That's an entrepreneurial opening, I think.
Iain, I'd have a sign that said Best Western.
Not Crown Royal?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It'd be Crown Royal first.
There's a few he could have.
Yeah, I know. Actually, maybe it's not such a good idea.
Exactly. Good point.
Yeah. Some people that have more sponsors than others.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
Iain, I'm not sure who you're. Well, you're sponsored by the O's marketing team. Is who you're sponsored by. It's perfect. We'll get you
Excellent.
a golf shirt to come. Okay. Just
right.
your reaction to the Canucks losing Kole Lind to the Kraken.
Yeah, that was the wild card. Obviously, was Braden Hotby, and whether what Seattle was going to do with their goaltending, because there were a lot of choices. I don't know if you guys heard, they could have taken Carey Price too.
Yes.
But once you got beyond that, it just seemed like Kole Lind was the logical choice, because in terms of prospect, and I'm putting air quotations around prospect, he's the best prospect. And even though, and I wrote this for Sportsnet, even though his future in the NHL is far from guaranteed, he's young enough and has enough pedigree as a prospect that he's probably still has some value if Seattle decides that he's not going to be part of their team long term. So I wasn't surprised at Kole Lind. I've been surprised by a few of the other things, though.
Such as?
Well, just the obviously Seattle not wanting to take on money. They've got some very good players, and you look at their team. Isn't it great that the NHL, whether by accident or not, figured out with the Vegas expansion that if you actually let the new team be good, it makes for a better league. And Seattle is going to be really competitive. I like their team, but they obviously have shied away from spending big money on anybody. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised, because I know that Ron Francis has spoken several times about how vital cap space is, and he certainly has preserved a lot of it, not taking Price, not taking Tarasenko, not taking Duchesne or Johansson from Nashville, not even taking Max Domi. And so you look at their roster, and initially I wonder, okay, how are they going to get to the salary floor? Because they've got a lot of budget players, but they've got good players. And man, they look like they're going to be a team that's going to be miserable to play against. When you look at the forwards that they've got, like, Gordy and Yarncroc and Appleton and Donskoy and Tanev, that's not going to be a fun team to play against. But they've loaded up on D, similarly to what Vegas did, and their forwards are going to be competitive. Those are all NHL players. Once upon a time with expansion, you would get guys who were barely NHL players because the teams that had them were allowed to protect so many of them. Now you see good NHL players all through this lineup, and that's the way it should be. You should give your teams a chance. I digress, but can you imagine if, when the NBA came to Vancouver, if they actually had allowed the Grizzlies a chance to be good, how different that might have gone for the NBA in Vancouver. But certainly they showed the value of it with Vegas, and Seattle's going to be good too, competitive.
It's amazing what $650 million will get you. And Ian, as an aside as well, the late great David Stern said the way Vancouver was treated was one of his great regrets as commissioner. Braden Hotby, you touched on him. What's in his? It might be another season with the Canucks, but what's in his hockey future?
Well, I think there's a lot of interest in Braden Holtby, and this experience, this expansion experience, I have to say, from a reporter's standpoint, and I'm sure it's that way for management standpoint, player standpoint, it's been so different than what it was with Vegas. With Vegas, essentially all the teams were talking to George McPhee. In this case, the teams are talking to Ron Francis, but they're also talking to each other. And that's the biggest difference. That the trades we saw ahead of time leading up to Saturday, including the Canucks getting Dickinson, those GMs talking to each other. So it added this tremendous pressure point for teams to basically reassess their own roster and look at what else is available from other teams. And a byproduct of that is that teams like the Canucks, with a player like Braden Holtby, they've talked to so many other teams now about what their needs are and what they're thinking. And I think they've discovered that there's maybe a market for Braden Holtby. I think had they been willing to add a sweetener of some kind for Seattle might have taken Holtby, but the Canucks, didn't want to do that, and understandably so, because if they are going to make significant trades, it's to create cap space. So it defeats the purpose if you're retaining salary. But I think the Canucks feel that there's enough interest in Braden Holtby that if they decide that that's the way they'd like to create some more cap flexibility, they can find a deal out in the market that doesn't involve Seattle.
Ian, take a look at the blue line. Edler's gone. Okay, look, he's going to go test the market. Hamonick's a UFA. Schmidt wants a trade. I mean, when I look at what's happening, I understand they still want to move Holtby. I understand, they're still looking for a winger, top six winger. But my goodness, they got to get going on defense. Do they not?
Yes, they do. And part of me wonders, with all these guys that Seattle has taken, is there a claim and trade in there somewhere for Vancouver? I don't think there is. But there were certainly, they have surplus defensemen. Vancouver does have to address the defense. Now, I'm not convinced that Alex Edler won't be back, but I also think that none of us should be cynical about the news that broke on your show last week that he's going to market. I don't think that's a ploy by him. I don't think it's for leverage, because he's never done that before.
Exactly.
So I think he's legitimately going to look out in the market, but I wouldn't completely write him off as a Canuck, but it looks like he'll be leaving. Nate Schmidt, if they do trade him, presumably they're getting a defenseman back. I know they want to create some cap flexibility, maybe reallocate a little bit. Like if you save $6 million on Nate Schmidt, maybe get a $2 million defenseman back, and you now have $4 million to go find that top six winger that they also need. But you're right, Rick. The defense is very much right now hollowed out, and they're going to have to get some players who can help. But there will be guys available. It's one thing about this indefinitely flat cap, and we saw it in this market last fall with the Travis Hamonic signing at the last minute, is that there will be NHL players without contracts before next season begins, and there will be other NHL players whose teams are looking for a new home for them because they can't afford everybody. They can't get everybody under $81.5 million. So there will be guys available, but right now it's a bit of a mess.
Okay, yeah. And Ian, very, very quickly, this is the first time we had you on in a while. Just your memories of someone who left us last week, Kent Cookie Gilchrist.
Just a wonderful, wonderful person. I said to a couple of my colleagues when I think of Cookie, and because he worked for the province and I worked for the Sun, we did a lot of road trips together. And, you know, we went to IndyCar spring training in Florida. We stayed in the Florida Keys, Cookie and I. We did a couple of Lions camps out of town. There were golf events. And you really get to know somebody well when you're traveling with them and on the road. And I said to a couple of my colleagues, when I think of Cookie and all the funny things, and he was such a big-hearted person. He was a good person. And when I think of all the memories, they're all positive. Like, how rare is that? Like, even with your friends, even with your people in your family, there's always some painful memories or things you regret. I can't think of anything with Kent Gilchrist that wasn't a happy memory. So it's just sad that he's gone so soon. It's hard to believe.
Yep. Iain, thanks so much for this. All the best.
See you guys.
You bet. Iain MacIntyre from Sportsnet.ca.